Hello, friends and neighbors, and welcome back to another entry into the poem of the day. And this poem is for today, which is Thursday, September the 18th, 2025. We've been reading a lot of poems about autumn and about fall recently, using autumn as a setting to contemplate war, to contemplate death, to contemplate the natural cycle of things, destruction, rebirth. All of them have a connotation of loss, and all of them have a connotation of melancholy or sadness. And so does this next poem, yet I think it ends with more of a reassurance than some of the ones that we have looked at recently. So the poem today is called Autumn, and it's by Rainer Maria Rilke, who is a poet that a lot of people are familiar with. And the poem is in translation. This is the first time that we'll be reading from him on here. The poem is in translation. It was published in 1918 and then translated by Jesse Lamont much later. At least that's the translation I'll be reading from today. Rilke lived from 1875 to 1926, so a really rather brief life. And this is his poem, Autumn. The leaves fall as from far, like distant gardens withered in the heavens. They fall with slow and lingering descent. And in the nights the heavy earth, too, falls from out the stars into the solitude. Thus all doth fall. This hand of mine must fall, and lo, the other one. It is the law. But there is one who holds this falling infinitely, softly, in his hands. So Rilke's brief poem here in this translation is 9 lines long. It's 3 stanzas. The first stanza has 3 lines. The second is 2. It's a couplet, but it does not rhyme. And then the final one is a quatrain of 4. Within this translation, there's not a discernible rhyme scheme, but there is a sonic quality that I think is worth remarking. I like the very first line, talks about the leaves fall as from afar. And so there's a caesura right in the beginning, right around fall. And what's nice about it is it sounds like a leaf falling, and the way that the leaves kind of dance back and forth. The leaves fall as from afar. It recalled for me the famous chiasmus at the end of The Dead by James Joyce, which reads, I'm paraphrasing, but it reads something like, the snow is gently falling gently on the living and the dead. And I apologize for most likely butchering that, but I think you get my point from that. And Rilke then immediately gives us a simile in the second line, like distant gardens withered in the heavens, as though there is still something Edenic that exists outside of our reach, and the falling leaves and the death are a reminder of that. So like some of the poets we read earlier this week, for example, Wallace Stevens, Rilke seems to be dropping in some religious allusions in order to refer to the fall, both as the fall of man, but also the season of autumn. And in this last line of the opening tercet, they fall with slow and lingering descent. I really love the double meaning that descent can have. Descent, the way it's spelled in this translation, is to go down, opposite of ascent. But if it also means dissent, like dissent, meaning disagreement. So you can read it as the leaves falling with a slow and lingering disagreement. It lingers, it stays with them, they're not giving in, and yet they are also kind of unable to stop their own falling. So the fall is slow because there's a resistance within it. The second stanza, this brief couplet, reminds us that in the nights the heavy earth too falls from out the stars into solitude. This is very difficult for me to make sense of. The earth is falling out of the stars and into solitude, but just on a not on even on a literal level, but on a visual level, it's hard for me to fully grasp what Rilke's going for here, because the first stanza is so familiar in its imagery, that it's something that we all have seen and something that we all can understand and visualize, so that when he's using it to suggest something else, the analogy is not that far. But the heavy earth falling, I think, is difficult for us, unless it's talking about earth falling perhaps upon a casket, right? The way that you would cast, the removed dirt upon a descending casket at a burial or memorial for a person. However, it's referring to the earth falling from out of the stars into solitude, and the solitude might then be the solitude of eternal rest or burial. Our final stanza, which is the longest, the 4-line stanza, thus all doth fall. So everything falls. And I think there is maybe the strongest indication that this poem is not just about the fall of nature, the autumn of nature. It's not just alluding to the fall of man, but it is also talking about kind of the fall of death, right? Descending into the earth, and then the earth falling upon us in solitude. He writes, "This hand of mine must fall, and lo, the other one. It is the law." And that's where we're getting some of this, again, more of the sonic quality of the poem. The first line has that strong alliteration of the leaves fall, fall as from afar. And then here we're getting a kind of a slant rhyme between fall and law, where they at least have a assonance within them, and the L and the W don't rhyme, but it leads into that kind of awe that's within those. So I would associate them more by assonance, before we get a falling repeated again in the third line of this stanza. And as he's talking about these two hands, I'm wondering if he's speaking within the exact present moment of this hand of mine that's writing must fall. So even at some point when I die, or even before I die, I'm going to have to kind of put the pen down, and the life and the spirit within me that's giving life to these poems, and that's putting my creative spirit into existence beyond my mortal time, that this too must fall, because the mortality of it is a part of the hand that is creating. And it's the law of nature. And then these last two lines assure us that, but there is one, and the one is capitalized, who holds this falling infinitely softly in his hands, and the his is capitalized again. So this has to, I think, speak to some sort of God or some sort of ordering spirit outside of the world of the poem, and also outside of the world of death, because they're holding all of it softly in their hands, whomever this one is. And the softness of it is, I think, a sense of a catching or a sense of a cradling. So when I said earlier that this one had a more, I guess, positive association with it, and then I talked for a while about death in here, it ends with talking about, falling through death into being caught and cradled in some infinitely soft hand, which I think is a really lovely and warm image that Rilke ends the poem on here. I think I'll end my comments there for today, a little bit short, just because the poem, in ending in this soft and cradled way, offers a variation on some of the themes that we've explored earlier in the series, namely the image of leaves changing and falling as kind of representing a human death, or representing some sort of failing or error. But then the cradling at the end is one that I think is a nice sort of, it's going reassurance that you're in good hands, literally, that things are going to be all right, and that this is the natural order of things. And I think that's a nice way to kind of end the reflection on it. Thank you for being with us again, and I hope you'll join us again in the future. Until then, may peace be with you.